You may be wondering how to answer inference questions. In this video, I will work through example inference questions using a 4-step reading strategy. Angela here from Custom Classroom, helping make test prep simple. Let's quickly review what is an inference question. Inference questions ask about something that is not directly stated in the passage. Most of the time, these questions require understanding the big picture of the passage. Readers have to use clues from the passages and some of their own prior knowledge to come to a conclusion or inference. To work through an inference question, I like to use my 4-step reading strategy. I've made another video about this STAR strategy. Step 1 is scan, 2, target text, 3, actively read, 4, respond. Now let's work through a few inference questions. Step 1, scan the questions. We're trying to think about if the question is whole or part. Whole requiring information from the entire passage, or part where students can only return to a section of the passage. Inference questions are almost always whole questions, since you need to understand the whole passage to come to your conclusion. Now let's look at the first question. Which of the following is true about the lion cub? This is a whole question since you need to make a conclusion about the lion cub. Now let's look at the second question. Which statement about Tarzan is true? This is also a whole question since you need to make a conclusion about Tarzan in general. Now let's look at the third question. What does the author mean by hated man scent? This is also a whole question trying to understand the author's meaning. Step 2 is to target the text. Tarzan smiled with them, but he did not cease his attention toward the cub. Reaching out suddenly, he caught the little lion by the scruff of his neck and then stroked it gently. He talked to it in a low, cooing tone. I do not know what he said, but perhaps the cub did, for presently it ceased its struggles and no longer sought to scratch or bite the caressing hand. After that, he picked it up and held it against his chest. It did not seem afraid now, nor did it even bare its fangs against this close proximity to the former hated man scent. We can see that this is a fictional passage about Tarzan. So for step 3, actively read, we will think about setting, character, problem, and solution. In this passage, the setting is hard to tell, but unrelated to the question, so we'll move on. The characters are Tarzan and the lion cub. The problem is the lion cub is scared, and the solution is that Tarzan calms the lion cub. So we'll think about this story as a whole as we begin to answer our inferencing questions. Step 4 is to respond to the questions. Let's look at question 1. Which of the following is true about the lion cub? A, he felt comfortable with Tarzan. This sounds pretty good, so let's look for clues in the passage. I can see the passage says that the cub ceases its struggles and is no longer trying to scratch or bite and is now not afraid. So these clues can lead me to the conclusion that the lion cub now feels comfortable with Tarzan. But let's continue and look at the other answer choices. B, he was stolen from his parents. This is incorrect since there are no clues about the parents or being stolen. C, he is terrified of the humans. Now this sounds possible, so let's look at it more closely. The lion cub is scared since he is struggling and scratching in the beginning, but to say he is terrified of all humans is a bit too extreme of wording. But this is a great example of an answer choice that is almost correct and easy to get tricked on. D, he tried to run away. This is also incorrect since there are no clues suggesting that he was running and that Tarzan had to chase him to then catch him. Question 2. Which statement about Tarzan is true? A, he used to be an animal. This is incorrect since there are no clues that would lead you to believe that he was an animal before. This question is trying to trick people who have prior knowledge of the story about Tarzan. Tarzan used to live with gorillas, but was not an animal. B, he has a way with animals. This sounds pretty good, so let's look for clues. In the passage, Tarzan is stroking the lion gently, and he talks to it in a low cooing tone, and this leads to the lion not seeming to be afraid anymore. So these details all seem to lead us to the conclusion that Tarzan is good with animals. C, he wants the lion for a pet. This is incorrect since there are no details in the passage that would make you think Tarzan is calming the lion so that it can be his pet. D, he is not used to humans. This is also incorrect since the idea that Tarzan is not like humans is again trying to draw on your prior knowledge, but there aren't any details in this part of the passage. Now let's look at question 3. What does the author mean by hated man scent? First, let's look back at the passage where it says, "It did not seem afraid now, nor did it even bare its fangs against its close proximity to the former hated man scent." Now, this is a bit of a trickier question. We know that the word former means before. So in the passage, it's meaning that the lion used to hate, but does not seem to hate right now. This leads us to believe that when he is first picked up by Tarzan, he is struggling and scratching and biting. So we can infer that the lion is either scared of Tarzan, who is a man slash human, or does not like him. Therefore, we can assume that the hated man scent is probably the smell of a person triggering this lion's fear. So an answer might sound something like this. When the author says hated man scent in the passage, he means the lion knows to be afraid and not like people by their smell. If you are trying to look for more inference practice for your students, check out my inference task cards on Teachers Pay Teachers. I hope you found this video helpful. Subscribe for more tips to help your students with reading test prep.